good evening and welcome to the Super License F1 podcast. My name's Rodney.
And my name is Zach.
Good to be talking to you, Zach. There's no race this week. We finished our Dare to Swear season. So what do? Well, we just shake it off, baby.
Shake it up, shake it up. Are you Taylor Swift fan? Do you get around the Swiftie?
Nah.
Nah?
No, there's bits of her whole deal that I think are very good. Not really into her music, but that's not a personal thing for her because she's just part of that whole mainstream thing that I just don't really do that much. But
you don't think she's sitting around with her agent being like, if I just get Rodney on board.
Yeah. Rodney and all the other Rodneys in the world.
And
yeah,
all
exactly.
Rodney.
Hasn't she? She's played at COTA, I think, for 1 year, didn't she?
If only she could crack the rest of the market though, right? She's got the US on lock. But everywhere else,
true.
No idea who she is.
Playing to the converted. But in Austria, though, no idea who she is.
No, that's
anyway,
fine.
What are we going to do today, Zach? I mean, first of all, how are you going? You going well, I hope?
Good.
Hanging in there.
Yeah. We're starved for Formula One at this point, right? It's been weeks and weeks. Can't even remember what it's like to have David Croft say, lights out and away we go. Might have to build a soundboard of his sayings just to get me through these last few days before. I've even forgotten where we're going next. Is it Spa? Is that right?
It's Spa. Don't play dumb. The best racetrack on the entire calendar. I was going to say when you said that, it's like we haven't had Formula One for a long time. I do wonder whether they put Spa first after the break, just as like I don't even know. It's almost like a little treat for having not had F1 for a little while. Like we'll get you back. This one will win everybody back and just wake everybody up because it's such a great track. Yeah,
I feel like that is what Christmas is in the UK or in the Northern Hemisphere. Like there's nothing really, like you get some like public holidays, bank holidays through summer. Summer's great. And then you just get this long autumn and reach into winter where nothing happens. And it's just dark and you and work. And then it's like Christmas. Here we go. You've waited long enough for any reason to do anything. Have Christmas. It's such a contrast to Australia where it was like Christmas is just in and amongst all the joy of summer anyway. So it was like just a little cherry on top. Whereas here it's like it is the main event. And maybe this is exactly what Spa deserves, to be like a whole second half of the season launch.
Maybe. You might be right. I think you're onto something there. So anyway, like we said, the normal format for a super license show would be we have a race to talk about and then we do a quiz and then we have a great time and then we pack her up boys. But because there's nothing to bounce off in that regard, we have to come up with other things. So what do? We do a Twitter poll. We've got a big topic of the week that you and I are going to deep dive into. Got a few other little nuggets of interest that have come up here and there. So we're going to cover some of those. And then we're going to call it a show. First thing though, I'm going to open up is this little link, which is the Shakedown poll, the trademarked, world-famous, well-renowned super license Shakedown poll. This one, Zach, inspired by you. This was what I put up on Twitter as a poll. On a scale of 1 to 5, how much bigger should F1 cars be? Your options, despite what the question says, your options are yeah, nah, or nah.
Oh.
Lots of votes already come in. We'll find out at the end of the show what the people voted. Zach, what say you? On a scale of 1 to 5, how much bigger should F1 cars get? Yeah, nah, or nah?
Yeah, nah.
You reckon yeah, nah? Okay.
Yeah, nah. Yeah, they shouldn't get any bigger.
Interesting. Yeah, nah. Cool.
Yeah, nah.
Well, we'll find out later if people agree with you. But people will stick around for that. That's called forward promotion. What else are we going to cover off today? Well, look, this was a suggestion. This is a suggestion of yours, is that we just actually challenge ourselves and try and come up with something to talk about. And the topic, do you want to introduce the topic for the week?
Yeah, I do want to introduce the topic. Nah, fuck. It's going to be like this whole show. Jesus
Probably.
Christ. Funnily enough, I was just in preparation for this segment. I was just going to go to the Formula One website and I typed in F1 and my browser autofilled authentics.com instead of just f1.com. I go to the Authentics website more than I go to the F1 regular actual website. Anyway, I thought we would, this might be a fun topic. Which two current drivers would you swap in order to improve and strengthen both teams? The reason I think this is an interesting topic is we often talk about, one driver going off to one team and, that's good for the driver. They're usually if they're going to a big team, they're usually either an up and coming or, vastly experienced with successes. And we talk about that maybe suiting the driver and a little bit of it suiting the team, but we don't often think about the guy who's leaving. Sometimes they're retiring, but more often than not, they're switching out to a different team too. So I wonder if there are any teams who are looking around being like, God, if we could get driver X, we'd really improve. But then our outgoing driver, would there ever be a circumstance where if you took the outgoing driver and put them back in that other spot that's just been vacated, if that would somehow improve that team too? So I thought it might be fun to challenge each other to think about the current driver lineups and see where those are going, or even to look back at some that have happened in the past or recently. I mean the last few years, that maybe if they swapped teams, there might have been a little bit of an improvement for both teams. Anyway.
We can try and do that. I haven't done that much homework, but we can try and do that.
That's okay.
There was also a thing that I tweeted because I thought it was really silly. Someone on a website saying Red Bull must look to sign Valtteri Bottas to replace Sergio Perez. And I was like, must they? Why must they? I didn't bother to read the article because I thought the headline was bonkers and stupid. But I couldn't understand I can't understand where that person's coming from. But it did get me thinking about this general topic about, is there two drivers on two different teams at the moment that have specific skills that other teams need? So I've got sort of a bit of a rough shape of something that I could get into, but did you have anything in mind? Obviously, you proposed this, so you must have been thinking about it at least.
I've proposed it, so I must have it really on my mind.
That's my way of saying you're going first.
Yeah, well, I think that there's a simple one here to kind of kick us off, which would be... And the reason I think this one kicks off is because it might actually happen. There is a chance that it would happen. And I think it's Bottas and Russell swapping.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people think that will probably play out. But talk me through how, obviously, Mercedes, I can see probably nice injection of youth and future-proofing. How does it benefit Williams? Talk me through your thinking.
Sure. I think one of Williams' problems is that they have two inexperienced drivers who are both very much looking at their careers being like, well, I think definitely Russell is looking at it, it's like, God, how long am I going to have to fucking be here for? Can I race literally anything else? When's Bottas going to be shifted out? And so we're seeing wherever Russell can be strong, he tries to be strong. And I think Latifi is fine. He's a fine driver. I think that the car lets him down a little bit, but I think getting someone like Valtteri Bottas, who has been at Williams in the past, who knows that team very, pretty well. Maybe it's not quite the same team that he left. That's true. But it would also probably put him in more of a senior, possibly number one driver scenario, if you could even have that at a team further down the grid. That would kind of liven him up a little bit and give him more responsibility and a leadership role in a team. He'll become, what Sebastian Vettel is a little bit at Aston Martin. He's the guy that, there's not a huge amount of expectation on Williams to go and start winning races, but really to continue their reinvention. It's not going to be Bottas that gets them back up into championship winning form, but he might be the John the Baptist before Jesus Christ. He might just be the guy who comes before, and can help reinvigorate them. And I think he would get a lot out of a role like that. And I think that would definitely improve Williams as opposed to just having two drivers who are focused on just trying to get anything out of the car. I think Bottas would bring more breadth of experience to the whole race weekend. And obviously with Russell going to Mercedes puts a little bit of pressure on Hamilton, which might make him change his focus a little bit, which might be good for him and kind of liven him up a little bit and liven up Mercedes as well. But do you think that Bottas would have a positive change at Williams?
I guess so. I think what I'm weighing up more or less is, what does Bottas bring to Mercedes that Hamilton doesn't already bring? And then what does Russell bring Mercedes that Bottas doesn't bring? And that's where the situation at Mercedes obviously just clicks into place really well. And I think you hit the nail on the head with just it feels weird now to call Greg Russell a junior driver. I know, but we call him Greg. It's our internal thing. But then I had to I was doubting myself. I was like, wait, is Greg the one that we call him? Is that our inside joke or is that his real name? I wasn't doubting, am I getting it right? I just wanted to get it wrong, but in the right way.
You wanted to get the joke right. I understand that feeling.
Exactly. It feels weird to call Russell a junior driver, given that he's so many years in now and has experience at Mercedes, led Grand Prix, etc., etc. But I guess he is technically a junior driver. But I think the problem for Williams is that they're in a position where they need drivers. They need to make do with the drivers that they can afford to they're in a bit of a rebuilding phase, so they won't be in this situation forever. But for the last 3, 4, 5 years, I guess, they've wanted drivers that came with some kind of financial benefit. They may get their way out of that, but then again, that may be the way of Formula One forever, so who knows? But definitely getting some more experience, definitely getting someone who can develop the car and has driven, the best cars that there have ever been in Formula One. Certainly, you can't argue that that's not a benefit to get someone like that in your team.
Do you think Bottas will come in and be like, have you guys thought about making it faster? Like, why isn't it faster or more stable on the road? Like,
just rip off everything they do.
Yeah. Have you seen the Mercedes? They use like heaps of computers. Have you thought about getting 300 more people so they can do all, like, I usually have like a squad of guys who are looking at all of my data, and you've got like 2 guys. Why don't you have 200 guys?
He's really good at driving cars. Lewis Hamilton, you should sign him. Get him in that car. He'll go way faster.
Just get a guy like him. Yeah. Have you thought about getting a massive sponsor or perhaps being owned by a massive car company? You should do that.
Why aren't you winning? Why are you losing? Why don't you stop losing?
Yeah.
Pick yourself up. Stop being such a loser. All right. Well, that's a good call.
Yeah, I think that was the easy one. I think it's more difficult scanning down the list. It gets more creative now. Do you have one?
You do have to get creative when you go beyond that. A couple of stats that I saw recently brought this topic to life and into clarity for me. Number one, my 2 teams in question are Aston Martin and Alfa Romeo. Did you know? Let me ask you this, Zach. Who do you think in the current Formula One grid, who has gained the most positions on the first lap this season?
The fact that you're talking about these 2 drivers, but these 2 teams, sorry, is it something random like Stroll? Is Stroll just like finding his way up 3 positions every race, something like that?
Well, I'll tell you this: Stroll is actually second on the list.
Oh,
out of the I've got the top 5 in front of me here.
Huh. So
you have to also factor in, I guess, like it's not going to be Hamilton because on average he's not gaining that many positions, on the first lap.
No, he
tends to be right
second. Yeah,
yes,
he's got nowhere to go. Who's good at starts? I feel like Kimi with his like rally.
Yeah,
now
stop talking. You've got it. You've got it exactly right. Kimi Raikkonen. So we had 11 races so far, 10, 11. I forget how many because I just remember there's like half of the season -1. We've still got. Oh, actually, we should talk about that later. Anyway, let's say halfway through the season, call it 10 races or 11 races. Kimi Raikkonen has gained 30 places on the first lap so far this year. So he is he's a start master. He's the best at gaining positions.
Or he should have qualified.
The start. Well, put that down to the car. Anyway, this is also to say why him, and then why potentially one of the drivers at Aston Martin. I won't say who until just 1 second, but until last race, really, Aston Martin were right in the fight with AlphaTauri for the championship positions, and then Alpine were just behind both of them. But after the last race in Hungary, Alpine shot up to the lead out of those 3 with Aston Martin right behind them, and with AlphaTauri right behind them, and Aston Martin left with virtually no points. So they've fallen in that very, very tight battle. They have now fallen to be the last out of those 3. So my thinking was, how are Aston Martin going to benefit by getting someone like Kimi? Well, we know. The facts speak for themselves. He gains positions on the first lap. Forget the fact that Kimi gains 30 positions so far on the first lap. Stroll and Vettel are number 2 and number 3. They're also okay at gaining positions, but Kimi's better. Wow. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So you need the driver there that's going to get you the most positions. So who do you pull out of Aston Martin and put into Alfa Romeo? Oh boy, it could only be one person, couldn't it? So I'm sorry, Seb Vettel, but you are going to Alfa Romeo. Now let me pick out 3 benefits for Alfa Romeo by having Sebastian Vettel there. Number 1, he's not going to damage the car too much because anytime he gets into wheel-to-wheel battle, he just spins and kind of goes off the track. But when he does that, he doesn't damage the car. So your budget, your salary, everything's like it's all taken care of. You won't be damaging your multi-million-dollar car anytime soon. It's in safe hands, you could say. Another way it's better is that, Kimi, yes, world championship winner, but you might have noticed Vettel's won 4. So if you're talking about marketing, you're talking about experience, Vettel brings 4 times as much of all of that. So that's another benefit for the team. third benefit for the team. I don't know if you saw this video that went around. I think you might have, but the F1 drivers were all quizzed. Name all of the previous Formula One championship winners, going all the way back to the very first one, from now all the way back. It's a fun thing that you could all try and do. I didn't get very many. I did better than some of the drivers, though. But who got all of them, literally aced every single one. Ding, 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 Mr. Sebastian Vettel. So I propose that if he goes to Alfa Romeo and they submit him to every pub quiz, put him on every game show there is, hoping, because it's a percentage thing, right? Eventually there's going to be questions about Formula One, and that's when he's got to triple down, and he's going to be earning big dollars for them that way.
Do you think if you're the quizmaster on that night, you see Sebastian Vettel in the crowd, do you change those questions?
I mean, I wouldn't want to be writing them on the fly. There's also that sneaky thing that they do on quiz shows where if they want you to win, they feed you questions that are in your areas of interest. And if they want you off the show, they give you really curly ones. But having said that, a lot of quiz shows these days are like niche and you can pick a speciality. So yeah, I feel like Sebastian Vettel, he knows a lot about his areas of speciality. So he could, I think he could game the system a little bit.
I wonder if The Last Crusade of the Indiana Jones films. I don't feel like you like Indiana Jones films, I'm going to guess. Yeah? No,
Boy,
you don't like them.
Throw me under the bus, buddy. Thanks.
But
I loved them when I was a kid, but I outgrew them.
Yeah,
I outgrew them. And I've seen Last Crusade. That's all you needed to ask me.
Yeah. So I feel like Sebastian Vettel's maybe the Sean Connery character in that, right? Mr. Jones Jr., Senior.
Because of his hair, isn't it?
It's like, when young Indy walks in and he's like, count backwards. And he's like, 10. He's like, no, in Greek. And I can imagine that that's what Sebastian Vettel's like with his kids. Of like, tell me all the parts of
Tell me all
car.
the...
No. Start with the smallest to largest.
Yeah. Tell me all of the former drivers for Ferrari. No, in Italian.
Yeah. No. I want you to introduce them in the languages that they spoke natively.
Oh,
so the first one is, yeah. So harsh. I love this. I love this idea. I also love the idea that it has to be Vettel that leaves Aston Martin because your dad doesn't own the team. So that's the reason. It also occurred to me as you were talking amongst these teams, 4 teams that start with A: Alpine, AlphaTauri, Aston Martin, Alfa Romeo. No wonder we've been tripping over them all season. There are too many similar names.
There's too many L's going around.
I don't like it. Oh yeah, 3 L's.
Some of those names are new. So you would think if you were a branding person that you would consider that.
Yeah, I know. But AlphaTauri can do no wrong. I love that car. I love their drivers. I love everything about their setup.
Some of it too is like the Forza. Remember like a few years ago where there was like, Forza this, Forza that. It's like, fucking hell, give me a break. Yeah. Like just give my poor brain a break.
Yeah, I think... what does Scuderia mean? Was in one of our past quizzes.
That's another one.
I think it means racing, but car racing and not like bike
racing.
Isn't
it like not a stable, but isn't it like the equivalent of like a garage or something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
like a racing syndicate or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think it's the Italian word for whatever the equivalent of a horse stable is for
a car stable.
Yeah, a car hole. Garage.
This is what people tune into this kind of show for. Before we proceed on, is there any other teams or drivers that you even want to throw out there and we could work it out as we go that you're like, it'd be better if those 2 drivers switched? Maybe now and previously, or go back 3 years, what 2 drivers could have switched? I don't know.
This is not specific answering that question, which is classic me. Le Mans 24 was on this past weekend. Thank you, Radio Le Mans, for letting me tune in on the radio and listen in late in the evening. One of my favorite things to do every year. It always creeps up on me and I always forget. And then I'm like, oh my God, I could be listening to Le Mans 24 right now. It's so calming and lovely. But just looking down these drivers and these teams, from the A teams except AlphaTauri, Alonso, Vettel and Raikkonen in a Le Mans 24 team. I would gobble that up.
Yummy.
Yes. Just like team dads, something like that.
Team dads. I love it.
Yeah.
Forza dads.
You could be sponsored by Kamoa, and whatever vodka that Kimi really likes, I think it would be really fun. Who else would I swap? I think I had one more. And I can't remember exactly who it was now. But I feel like it was around Pierre Gasly. I think that what Fernando Alonso is doing at Alpine is really great, but I feel like he'd be so much fun at AlphaTauri, but it would never happen. But I feel like that kind of going to Honda, them being a brand that he's worked with Honda before, right? Hasn't he? When did he work with Honda before? Did he ever work with Honda before? Why do I feel Honda and Alonso were together? Maybe never.
No, I don't think before the McLaren. I mean, there was Honda McLaren when he came back to them, but I don't think before that.
So
he was just liked in Japan, basically.
Yeah, I feel like that would have been that would be a really nice mix, but they're obviously getting out, so that's not going to happen. But I feel like he'd be a great fit for AlphaTauri, and it would totally rip up the script. AlphaTauri would no longer be this like, we're the junior drivers for Red Bull. It's like, no, we're our own team, and we've got this excellent champion driver here. We're grown up, we're separate, we're not just like and I don't even think AlphaTauri even positions itself like Red Bull does as this like the all action jump out of spaceships skydiving. They're like, we're a fashion design company that also happens to have a Formula One car. And I think Fernando Alonso would suit that. He would add a bit of edge. I think that him and Yuki would do so much for that team. Like, it would just be like super experienced and not experienced at all. And it would just create this really engaging dynamic that I think would be really good for AlphaTauri. And then putting Pierre Gasly, the French lad, in the Alpine with Ocon, I think they would genuinely be just fantastic team for the future, as they're trying to build up what Alpine means again in Formula One as a brand. And you could have those two drivers for like the next 10 years. They could just be, imagine that, like one team with two great drivers coming into their powers together. They could just dominate Formula One for ages. So yeah, swap Alonso and Gasly.
Good stuff. I've been sitting here as like, giving you absolutely my full attention to the degree that I can this late at night, but also trying to think like, what driver now compared to 3 years ago, you could swap him and his old version and both teams would be better, but I can't come up with anything. But if anyone does, feel free to email us or tweet us. This conversation can run and run. Yeah, you can send us a Twitter at Superlicense. You can send us an email at superlicencepodcast@gmail.com or join the Discord and just let us know. It'll be the topic du jour after this goes out, I'm sure. Maybe that gets us to Discord quite nicely.
Yeah, it's something we haven't been checking in on because we have had lots of interesting races to talk about. So we haven't really been checking in on the podcast
episodes
questions.
Like this give us the perfect opportunity to check in exactly right into that podcast questions channel. This is like we've been storing them up until now. And now that we've opened the floodgates, oh boy, I'm sure insights galore will be pouring into there. But has anything in here caught your eye specifically?
There has been from RobMan722 on the Discord. I'm just going to kind of essentially paraphrase this question. And this is when Red Bull were doing very well relatively recently. So this question's a few weeks old, but had said that, is Red Bull the fastest car if it is harder to drive than the Mercedes? Max might be good enough to drive it, but anybody else, some other people might struggle. Chico Perez, for example. But can you triangulate? The speed versus handling versus degree of difficulty, all that kind of stuff. Should we in fact be looking at best car by it's a combination of speed, agility, and ease of drive, as opposed to just being like, it's really fast, but only Lewis Hamilton can handle it. And the example I think that we're seeing is definitely at McLaren this season, where Lando Norris is just like, this car, I'm simpatico. Me and this car, we're simpatico. We get it. We know what's up. I can stroke out a really good performance from this car. Whereas Daniel Ricciardo's like, why this? Why is the steering wheel on backwards? Why is everything wrong? And he's having to work very hard to get any performance out of that car. So what do you think, Rod? Is it still the best car if it's hard to drive?
I mean, I think the sign of a car that is head and shoulders above every other car on the grid is when it's easy to drive and you're still winning. I think, though, this is something that took me ages to sort of get my head around, but I think in Formula One there's this idea that if the car is easy to drive, you're not doing enough to try and push for extra performance. So, it's almost like you've got to walk the line of making it as difficult as possible to drive without making it too hard while chasing every advantage that you can. So it's almost like, well, we can make the car super easy to drive. We can make it feel like you're going on a Sunday drive, but the car will be 3 seconds too slow. So we need to find not even a compromise. You need to do it. We're going to tell you. We're going to tell you how the car's going to be. And you're going to do your very best because you are one of the best drivers in the world. You're going to do your very best to keep it on the track.
I tend to agree with that. I think, and I think that's when you see Formula One drivers having the most fun. I think that they can, because I've thought about this too in a slightly different context. And like the Formula One drivers who just like Nico Hülkenberg is always tooling around the middle of the field, right? Was he enjoying his time in Formula One? And I think that the way he just kept jumping back into a car in every opportunity was like, yes, he just fucking loved driving Formula One cars. And I think you see that in Drive to Survive, right? They are all so happy when testing happens because they're like, yes, my favorite thing in the world, I get to do it again. And it's literally just driving the car. And when they are having the most fun is when they feel like and this is just me guessing, but from many years of watching Formula One and seeing drivers talk about this stuff and that same feeling you get when you go go-karting. You know what I mean, Rod? When it is, you've kind of understood it and you're driving on the edge, but it doesn't feel super dangerous. Like it doesn't feel like every move you make will be the end of you and this lap or this car, but more like, back squiggle kind of outside there, but I'm still in control. It's something, I think it's some advice that like, maybe Rob from the Box and Neutrals podcast gave years ago when we went go-karting as a group. And he was just like, yeah, if it's not sliding around, you're probably not you're not pushing hard enough. And I just remember getting in for the second session being like, shit, like it should be out of control most of the time, but it's not really out of control. Like you've got to be comfortable with that little bit of slip and that little bit of like, oh, that was a little tighter than I expected. I got quite close to the wall there. So I think you're right. If you're not driving it on the edge, I suppose that you're not pushing it enough, but I suppose it's the difference between, is it a knife edge or is it like, what are the other edges? Cliff edge? How high is the cliff that you're going to fall off, I suppose? Yeah.
And then there's the edge of reason. I guess the easy way to illustrate this would be to say if you had two cars and they set exactly at the same time around a lap, except one was a lot easier than the other one to drive, you'd have to say that the one that's easier to drive was much faster. Not just for this fact that it's easier to drive, so you're less likely to make a mistake or whatever, but if you made some changes to get more performance and made it just as difficult to drive as the other one, you would be faster. So I think that paints the picture pretty clearly.
Yeah, I think that's nice.
Anything else in the Discord that we could chew over? Because we've been focused elsewhere, but now's the time for the Discord to shine. There's stuff about questions about Andy Cowell leaving and where he went. I have no information about that, unfortunately.
I don't know either. I like this question.
Yes.
Maybe we answered this another time, but that's a good one to check in. Scrappiest driver in Formula One. Who do you think's this? I think this dovetails nicely with the question around like cars hard to drive. I think Daniel Ricciardo would be considered quite scrappy right now. I think he's scrapping to get any points at all, and he's not really covering himself in like gliding glory. I think he is a scrapper, and the more I look back at his career, the more I'm like, oh yeah, like you got wins when they were just on offer and you kind of had to make it work. There were a couple of times when he dominated races, but other times it's like, oh, you managed to pick up the scraps there. I know that doesn't make someone scrappy, but it's another use of the word scrap, so maybe that's enough.
Yes. I guess, that wasn't, I mean, that's much better than what I was thinking when I was like, who's the scrappiest driver? I was thinking more about who has a driving style where if the car's all over the place, they can kind of hold it together a little bit better because they're just so scrappy. But I guess that's more what you're talking about. I like what you're talking about better, where it's like, well, given what's on the table, who fights and scraps to go to get as much out of it or more out of it. I feel like Ricciardo, though, lately especially, it's been almost like, yeah, he scraps, but then there's also weeks where he makes a dumb mistake and gives it away.
So true.
Too often where other drivers who are less scrappy, but they haven't done that. I don't know. You got to get the right balance of consistency, scrappiness, and good hair. Those are the three things you need to have if you're a good F1 driver.
Oh,
guess.
that's Charles Leclerc, I think. Good hair, scrappiness. I think he's a scrapper. I think he was scrappy at Alfa Romeo, Slauber. Slauber's not great. That'd be a fun game. Just add one letter to a Formula One team to make it.
Yeah, ruin an F1 team with one letter.
Oh, we should. We'll finish on that. Let's finish on that.
There you go.
But I think he's still scrappy at Ferrari. I think that he just kind of forces things out of that car that maybe that car's not quite ready for a lot of the time. And you know what it's been like this season. You're like, Charles Leclerc fourth. Interesting.
Yeah,
where did that come from?
That's like trademark scrappy.
Yeah, exactly.
Bringing the scrap. Well, okay. Yes, absolutely. Totally agree. I think the Charles Leclerc, I wouldn't have thought of him, but it's another great nomination for this.
I'm always thinking of
the scrappiest of drivers. And I think
Charles
it also makes sense. The scrap. It makes sense why, other drivers like Sainz, very, very good driver, can go to Ferrari and maybe not perform to his level because he hasn't been accustomed to the ways of the scrap. Yeah. Yes. It explains a lot when you think about it.
Well, and maybe he got so used to the McLaren, like he was getting good performances out of the McLaren too, but maybe that car suits both Sainz and Norris. And now that Ricciardo's there, he might just have a different driving style. Because you hear about all these drivers having different styles, and I haven't done the research, but I was like, is there a resource that I can go and look at for all the current drivers and be like, what are their driving styles? Like, how are they different? Not just temperament, but also like, we always hear things like, oh, well, he's easy on the tires. He's easy on the eyes.
I was going to say
that. He takes weird lines or prefers to be aggressive at the start and then kind of cruise into, in the second part of a stint, back off. Like those kinds of things. But in the end, I feel like maybe this is me being a layman, but like they all seem to drive pretty much the same, they'll take the same line.
They're on the same track in the same kind of cars. You think you would just sort of have to, like, there's a best way to drive and everyone just has to do that, right?
Kind of. I mean, is that too reductive? It kind of feels like that. I don't think Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen are doing anything crazy different. I think they're very good, and I think they're in very good cars, and I think they have more either drive to survive or like more, I think they have more talent, but also they're more dedicated than some other drivers. But they're also in lucky positions too. But I don't think they're doing anything. It's not like you would be like, you know what Max Verstappen does? He never takes the racing line, and it's balls to the walls insane.
It might be one of those things. It's like a bit of a myth of driving styles. It's a bit like, for a long time people have talked about, I'm this type of learner. I'm a visual learner, or I'm an auditory learner. And it turns out that's a total myth. That's completely wrong. But it doesn't mean that people can't have their own preference, which is to say Max likes the car that slides around. It's like, well, okay, but that doesn't make him faster across a lap. It just means that he likes it better when it slides versus when it's too grippy. I mean, it could be something like that where it's sort of almost like a phantom. It just feels right. But when you actually dig into the data, there's nothing behind it. I don't know. Be interesting to know. Someone smarter than me tell me.
I wonder if it's maybe got more to do with the car as well. Like we were talking about scrappiness before. I don't think people people would think of Lando Norris as being a scrappy, but because he's got the measure of that car, it seems he can kind of drive it on the edge with a level of comfortability that is not like he's just like spinning all the time. But with a level of comfortability that he can focus with what's in front of him as opposed to like his own mistakes and what's behind him. And I don't think the car suits his driving style. I think that maybe I think it just suits more of the things he's good at, as opposed to like, I wonder if drivers could announce their style as much as they could say, well, actually what I'm good at is controlling the throttle through high speed corners. I'm quite like something that people used to talk about with Sebastian Vettel, in that like he would just be, when he was at the height of his powers at Red Bull, he'd be going through corners. And I know that the downforce on that car was crazy and weird diffuser stuff, but he was better at it than Webber was. That he could just keep his foot down through corners where you should be lifting. And it was like he has supreme car control and supreme throttle control and was just in another zone. And I think that when I don't know if that's so much style as just like drivers have different skills. Maybe they all equate together into a style, but there's too many moving parts. There's the car, the team, the track, other drivers. I think it would be hard to kind of pick out a style where you might be able to do that for tennis players, for example, and say, well, Roger Federer's style is to cover the court and move the other guy out of position, whereas Djokovic is just to like hit the ball as hard as he can. That's very reductive as well. But do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but in those cases,
people are maybe looking for that in drivers when it doesn't.
In
exist.
those cases, you're comparing like playing on clay versus playing on AstroTurf or whatever the other, all the other courts are. We're talking about two cars that are on the same bit of track, driving essentially the same kind of cars. For sure, they can be set up differently. No question. They totally can. And they can definitely be set up around drivers' preferences. But I just wonder how much of it is what they're comfortable with or think they're good at versus what the facts actually say. That's why, I have not done any, let me be very clear. I've not done any degrees in any of that. So I'm not an expert. I ain't no scientist in any of those degrees. I'm just an average punter sitting here asking an audience to listen to him.
Someone watched this episode of Ted Lasso recently. Huh.